In a video that has gone viral, Missouri State Representative Ian Mackey confronted a colleague over an amendment that would allow schools to restrict transgender athletes' participation in sports.
I grew up in a school district that would vote tomorrow to put this in place. And for 18 years, I walked around with nice people like you who took me to ball games, who told me how smart I was, and who went to the ballot and voted for crap like this. Thank God I made it out, and I think every day of the kids who are still there, who haven't made it out, who haven't escaped from this kind of bigotry.
Joining me now is Timothy Snyder, professor of history at Yale University and author of On Tyranny, which will be released in an expanded audiobook edition tomorrow with new content about the war in Ukraine. And Michael Eric Dyson, distinguished professor of African American studies at Vanderbilt University. Thank you both for being here. Mr. Snyder, congratulations on the expanded version of your book. I read the original On Tyranny. And, you know, when I see all of these individual stories, the bans on so-called critical race theory, Florida banning math books because they claim it teaches critical race theory. Just a number of bills, anti-trans bills, 153 anti-trans bills in 34 states. Just a massive number of anti-abortion bills in 536 laws so far in 42 states, anti-CRT bills. I put them together in one thing, which is fascism. It is this mania about trying to boost up white conservative Christian men and push down women and anything that's other than heteronormative, relationships. What do you see?
I think you're certainly right that, from a male point of view, a lot of what this is doing is trying to drive anxiety, right? It's trying to teach men that it's normal for there to be roosters, like figures like Trump or Putin, or for that matter, Hitler and Mussolini. These hyper-performing types are fascist types. And then the rest of us, other men, are supposed to be anxious. We're supposed to be worried. Are we producing enough children? Are we male enough? That is a fascist model, where you have this guy who struts at the top, and then everyone else is supposed to be worried and follow along with him for that reason.
Michael, Eric Dyson, I think about the Jews will not replace us and you will not replace us. Those are the two things that the Charlottesville, they were sort of like, thugs in, in tan suits, walking down the street, marching, you will not replace us. To me, that was a hyper-masculinity flex, too. It was this anxiety among these young college-aged men that somehow, taking away a statue of a long-dead white man who owned slaves was somehow threatening their very existence on this earth. And that, in their view, somehow Jewish people were fomenting this conspiracy to replace that kind of white man, that particular type of right-wing white man with, I don't know what, I guess with brown people, black people, with immigrants, et cetera. I put it all together, and it is down to not just masculine anxiety, but racial anxiety. What do you see?
Yeah, well, they certainly go together. The history of toxic racism is the history of toxic anti-women beliefs, femophobia, a fear of real women showing up. And when a real woman shows up, it challenges the testosterone level of men. They somehow feel they have to reassert violently their prerogative to not only lord it over women, but other men as well. When you talk about Tucker Carlson and the like, this generating a kind of mythical, all-powerful masculinity that at its root is afraid. It's scared little boys trapped in the bodies of muscle-bound men. What are they afraid of? Abortion is about the fear of the disappearance of the white race. So stop killing our babies and increase our wherewithal genetically. Racial intolerance is about the fear of ceding legitimacy to black people who they fear will do the same thing to them that has been done to us. And then fear of women is we've lorded over these women. Even when we put them up on a pedestal, it's a kind of frozen Jean-Jacques Rousseau 17th century respectability. The moment you shatter the image of an ideal woman for most of these men, you are the B word and you are to be tossed away. So all that does come together in this hyper-masculinist intolerance that is neo-fascist that resists governance by anybody except another white man. That's why all of that stuff runs together, and you're absolutely right.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and the anti-trans fixation, because let's just be clear, it's not an anti-trans in general. It's an anti-trans, someone like a Caitlyn Jenner. It's this fear of losing men to trans, as if there's some sort of conspiracy that trans is like a thing that's been created by the left to steal men and make them into women. That it isn't real. It's just it's something conspiratorial because they're fixated on that. You don't hear them talk a lot about trans men. They talk about trans women. Like that's the thing that's real. Or maybe the fear that they might come upon, a woman and realize it's fixating specifically on trans women. And I think in a very particular way. Do you think so, Michael?
Absolutely right. It's the body snatchers, except in this case, the bodies that are being snatched are trans people. And think about it. How many trans women are involved in trans women's sports? But we're directing all kinds of venom against them. The fear of trans is the fear of identification, right? Not to get too psychoanalytical here, but there's a fear that I will be what I despise. Therefore, I despise it before I become it. And as a result of that, if I can contain it through a phobic-like disdain, it will distance me from the very thing that I fear. As Job said in the Bible, this thing that I feared the most has come upon me. So the internal fear mechanism creates a kind of, disdain for the very thing that they fear that they might become. And it's kind of ludicrous in one way because the whole notion of trans is to unsettle rigid conceptions of masculinity, of femininity, of idealized expressions of biologically set, genetically determined identities. And they ain't with none of that. That's why they want to ban everything, ban bodies, ban books, ban ways of existence if they can.
And Timothy, to come back to you, I always take this back to politics, because if the right was just sort of politically weird and obsessed with masculinity and they had these sort of fetishes, that's fine. If Tucker Carlson, look, Tucker Carlson ain't Jason Statham, okay? The men in there ain't nothing like him. Like if he's afraid of, he's putting all these sort of manly figures that are nothing like him. Like, he's the guy in the bow tie that was on Dancing with the Stars. Like he's not like some macho man himself, but the men who are doing it are not that. They're something else. They don't seem like super alpha guys. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, what I worry about is what they're powering is another man who is in no way macho, Donald Trump. But what they're doing, he has led a movement, in my view. He co-signed the Charlottesville people. He's co-signed this neo-fascist move to the Republican Party. And now it is powerful. And it could win elections. We could have a fascist government at the federal and state levels. Are you concerned about that?
Yeah, I am very much concerned about that. And I guess the way these two things work together is that the sorts of ideas that Professor Deist and you are talking about are designed to turn men into a kind of herd. They're designed to turn masculinity into fear. Men are supposed to be afraid all the time. We're supposed to be afraid of the gays. We're supposed to be afraid of the trans. We're supposed to be afraid of the women. We're supposed to be afraid of demography. We're not producing ourselves enough. And so if you can define a group in terms of fear, what you've got is a herd or a mob. Now, that voting bloc, getting into your question, isn't enough to get Mr. Trump elected. It is, however, enough, along with some other voting blocs, to get him close enough in 2024 that an act of violence committed by a mob could push him over the top. And so what I'm concerned about is a combination of getting close enough, an angry, fearful mob, and our creaky constitutional system. Those three things together, unfortunately, make a very nasty scenario in 2024 very likely.